Steve Harvey has seen a lot of things on the Family Feud stage. He has seen families win life-changing money. He has seen answers so ridiculous that he had to walk off camera just to breathe. He has seen tears of joy, tears of disbelief, and tears of pure gratitude. But what he saw on a Friday afternoon in March 2025 was something entirely different. A wife stood at the Family Feud podium, looked her husband dead in the eyes, and exposed every lie he had ever told her. She did not scream. She did not cry. She laid it all out with the calm, surgical precision of a woman who had spent months collecting the truth and was finally ready to use it. And when she was done, Steve Harvey stood in the middle of that stage and said something that 200 people in the audience and millions watching at home would carry with them for the rest of their lives. There was a time when the foundation of a marriage was trust. There was a time when the person who slept beside you every night was the one person in the world who could not look you in the face and lie. But when Renee Wallace discovered just how deep her husband's deception ran, she did not confront him in their kitchen or their bedroom. She waited. She gathered every piece of evidence, and then she chose the biggest stage she could find to make sure the truth could never be denied, buried, or talked away again. If you believe that every lie has an expiration date, and that the truth always wins in the end, hit that like button and subscribe to our channel right now. What this woman does next is unlike anything that has ever happened on Family Feud. Renee Wallace was 40 years old. She was from Richmond, Virginia, the daughter of a high school history teacher and a woman who ran a small daycare out of the basement of their family home. Renee grew up in a house that was always full of noise, full of children, and full of books. Her father, Harold Mitchell, believed that knowledge was the most powerful thing a person could have. He would sit at the dinner table every night and quiz Renee and her two younger brothers on everything from the Civil War to current events. He used to say, "A person who knows the truth can never be controlled by someone who sells lies." Renee memorized that sentence. She did not know how much she would need it later. Renee was smart. Not just school smart but observant smart. The kind of person who noticed when something was off before anyone else in the room even sensed it. She graduated near the top of her class, earned a degree in accounting from Virginia Commonwealth University, and went to work for a mid-sized firm in Richmond that handled finances for small businesses. She was good at her job. She had a gift for looking at columns of numbers and seeing the story they told, the patterns that did not add up, the inconsistencies that most people overlooked. Her clients trusted her because she caught things that nobody else caught. It was ironic, in a painful way, that she would eventually use those same skills on her own marriage. She met James Wallace at a friend's cookout when she was 26. James was 29, a project manager for a mid-level construction firm. He was the kind of man who filled a room when he walked in. Big laugh, firm handshake, always the first person to volunteer for anything. He coached youth football on Saturdays. He helped his elderly neighbor with her yard work. He went to church every other Sunday and sang in the choir when they needed extra voices. James Wallace, to everyone who knew him, was one of the good ones. Renee fell hard. James was attentive in those early years in a way that made her feel like the center of the universe. He remembered the small things. He brought her favorite snack when she was working late. He called her father, "Sir," and spent hours talking history with Harold on the front porch. He told Renee on the night he proposed that she was the only woman he had ever loved who made him want to be a better man. Renee believed him. Her father believed him. Everyone believed him. They married in a ceremony at Renee's parents' church, a beautiful old stone building in the heart of Richmond. Renee wore her mother's veil and carried a bouquet of yellow roses, her favorite flowers since childhood. Harold walked her down the aisle with tears in his eyes and told James at the altar, "You are getting the best thing I ever made. Take care of her." James looked Harold in the eyes and said, "Promise, sir." For the first 9 years, the marriage worked. It was not always easy. They had their arguments, their stressful seasons, their moments of disconnect. But there was a foundation underneath it all that felt solid. They had 2 sons. Their older boy, Devin, was now 12, a serious and thoughtful kid who loved basketball and building model airplanes. Their younger son Micah was 8, a comedian in a small body who could make anyone in the room laugh within 30 seconds. Renee adored her boys. She coached Devon's math team. She let Micah tell her the same knock jokes 100 times without ever pretending to be tired of them. She was the kind of mother who was present in the small, daily, invisible ways that children feel more than they see. Renee continued working in accounting, eventually becoming a senior analyst. She handled the family's finances meticulously. Every bill was paid on time. Every dollar was accounted for. Their savings account grew steadily. Their retirement fund was on track. Renee knew exactly where every cent went because that was who she was. Numbers told stories and she read them fluently. James used to joke with friends that he could not even buy a candy bar without Renee knowing about it. Everyone laughed. James laughed the loudest. But somewhere along the way, he stopped finding it funny and started treating it as a challenge. Which is exactly why, 18 months before the Family Feud appearance, Renee noticed that the numbers in her own household had stopped making sense. It started with small things, a withdrawal from the checking account that James said was for a work expense, but that did not match any receipt. A credit card charge at a jewelry store in December that did not correspond to any gift Renee received for Christmas. Gas station charges in a town 45 minutes away that James had no work reason to visit. Individually, each one could be explained away. But Renee was an accountant. She did not look at numbers individually. She looked at patterns. And the pattern she was seeing told a story that made her stomach turn. Renee did not confront James. Not yet. Instead, she did what she did best. She investigated. She started keeping a private spreadsheet on a password-protected file on her personal laptop. Every unexplained expense, every inconsistency in his schedule, every lie she caught him in, no matter how small, went into that file. She cross-referenced his work calendar with his credit card charges. She compared his claimed locations with where his phone had actually been. She was not looking for a fight. She was looking for the truth, and over the course of 12 months, she found it. James had been funneling money to a woman named Lorraine Drake, a 34-year-old real estate agent in Fredericksburg. Over 18 months, the total amount was just over $47,000. Money that was supposed to be going toward their son's college fund, toward the kitchen renovation Renee had been saving for, toward the future they were supposedly building together. James had been draining their accounts in small, carefully spaced amounts, always under the threshold that would trigger an alert, always timed when Renee was busy with work or the kids. He had underestimated his wife. He had forgotten that she read numbers the way other people read books. Renee said nothing for 3 months after she had the full picture. She printed every bank statement, every receipt, every screenshot. She organized them in a binder with labeled tabs, the way she organized her client files at work. And then she came up with a plan. The Family Feud appearance had been James's idea. He had applied months earlier, seeing it as a chance to show off his personality on national television. The team was James, Renee, James's cousin Darren, Renee's sister Nicole, and their neighbor Frank. James was excited. He had no idea that Renee had agreed to do the show for a very different reason. She had chosen her stage. And she was ready. The Wallace family was matched against the Beckett family from Savannah, Georgia. The Becketts were a warm, boisterous family of 5, led by 2 parents who had been married for 35 years and could not stop holding hands on stage. The contrast between the Becketts' genuine affection and the tension simmering beneath the surface of the Wallace family was something the cameras would catch in hindsight, but that nobody noticed in the moment. Steve Harvey worked the introductions with his usual warmth. When he reached James and Renee, he asked the couple question, "James, tell me about your wife here." James put his arm around Renee and flashed that big, charming smile. "Steve, this woman right here is my queen. 14 years of marriage and she still looks as beautiful as the day I met her at that cookout. She is a brilliant accountant, an amazing mother, and the love of my life." The audience applauded. Renee smiled, but anyone looking closely would have noticed that the smile did not reach her eyes. Nicole, Renee's sister, standing at the end of the lineup, was not smiling at all. She knew what was coming. She was the only other person who did. The game began. The first 2 rounds were uneventful. The Wallaces won 1 round and lost another. James was animated and entertaining, working the audience and bantering with Steve like a natural performer. Renee played her role quietly, giving solid answers, staying composed. Everything appeared normal. Then came the 3rd round. Steve read the question. We asked 100 people, name something a wife might find that proves her husband is lying. Renee was up for the face-off against Mrs. Beckett. Both women reached for the buzzer. Renee hit it first. She did not look at the board. She did not look at Steve. She turned her entire body to face James, who was standing in the family lineup behind her. And with a voice that was so calm it sent a chill through the studio, she said, "A spreadsheet." The answer was not on the board. That did not matter, because Renee was not playing the game anymore. Steve looked confused. A spreadsheet. That is an interesting answer. I do not think that is up there, but let us see. Survey said. The board showed a red X, not on the board. That is okay, Renee. Steve said, moving on. Mrs. Beckett, you get a chance to steal or give me your answer for the face-off. But Renee spoke again. She was still facing James. It was not a game answer, Steve. The studio got quiet. Steve paused. He looked at Renee, then at James, then back at Renee. His instincts, sharpened by years of reading families under pressure, told him something had just shifted. What do you mean, Renee? Renee turned back to Steve. Her face was composed, her voice was steady, but her eyes were burning with the controlled intensity of a woman who had rehearsed this moment 100 times in her mind and was finally living it. I mean that I am a senior accountant, Steve. I have spent the last 12 months tracking every dollar that has left our family's accounts. Every withdrawal, every credit card charge, every unexplained expense. I put it all in a spreadsheet because that is what I do. I find the truth in the numbers. And the numbers told me that my husband has spent over $47,000 on another woman in the last 18 months. The studio exploded. 200 people gasped at the same time. Several audience members stood up. Others covered their mouths. A woman 3 rows back grabbed her friend's arm and said something inaudible. The Beckett family across the stage stood in stunned silence, Mr. Beckett's hand tightening around his wife's. James's face went through 3 stages in less than 2 seconds. Confusion, recognition, then terror. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. His cousin Darren took a step sideways away from him, as if distance could separate him from the fallout. Steve Harvey's card dropped to his side. His mouth was open. Not the comedic, exaggerated shock he was famous for. This was real. He stared at Renee, then at James, then slowly shook his head. Wet. Hold on. What did you just say? Renee did not raise her voice. She did not cry. She spoke the way she presented findings to clients at work, clear, organized, and devastating. $47,214, Steve. That is what he spent. On dinners, hotel rooms, jewelry that I never received, and a trip to Cancun that he told me was a work conference. I have the receipts. I have the bank statements. I have all of it. Every dollar is accounted for. Our son's college fund is nearly empty. The kitchen renovation I saved 3 years for is gone. He took it, and he spent it on someone named Lorraine who lives in Fredericksburg and thinks he is divorced. The precision of it was what stunned people. This was not a wife screaming accusations. This was a forensic presentation. Renee had turned her pain into evidence and her heartbreak into a case that could not be argued. James finally found his voice, but it came out strangled and panicked. Renee, baby, why are you doing this here? We can talk about this at home, please. Not like this. Renee's sister Nicole stepped forward from the lineup. No, James. You do not get to control when and where the truth comes out. You controlled everything else for 18 months. You controlled the money, the lies, the story. But you do not control this. She does, and she chose right here. The audience erupted in applause for Nicole. James stood with his hands at his sides, looking like a man watching a building collapse in slow motion, and knowing he was the one who pulled out the support beams. Steve Harvey had not moved. He was standing near his podium, still holding his card at his side, his face cycling through emotions that the cameras captured in vivid detail. Shock, admiration, sadness, and finally, a deep, settled resolve. He pulled out his earpiece and set it on the podium. The game was over. Steve walked to the center of the stage. He took his time. Every step was deliberate, and every person in that studio watched him move like he was the only thing keeping the room from coming apart. He turned to Renee first. "Renee, I need to say something to you before I say anything else. What you just did took a kind of courage that most people will never have. You did not come here to embarrass your husband. I can see that. You came here because you tried every other way. You tried at home, and he lied. You tried in private, and he denied it. So you came to the one place where the truth could not be whispered away or covered up, or explained with another lie. You brought the receipts, literally. And I have to tell you, in all my years on this stage, I have never seen anything like that." The audience applauded. Renee stood with her hands clasped in front of her chin level, her eyes dry. She was not performing. She was not seeking sympathy. She was simply standing in the truth she had built, number by number, over 12 painful months. Then Steve turned to James. The warmth left his voice, replaced by something harder and more direct. "James, you stood right here not 15 minutes ago and called this woman your queen. You said she was the love of your life. You said that with a smile on your face, with cameras rolling, with your family standing beside you, and every word of it was a lie. Not a white lie, not an exaggeration, a calculated, sustained, 18-month lie that cost your family $47,000 and nearly destroyed the future your wife was building for your sons." Steve stepped closer. "Let me tell you what gets me, James. It is not just the affair. People make mistakes. I have made mistakes. But you stole from your own family. You took money out of your children's college fund to finance a lie. You took the kitchen renovation your wife saved 3 years for and spent it on hotel rooms. You looked at those numbers every month and you knew your wife, the accountant, the woman whose entire career is built on finding the truth in the numbers, would eventually figure it out. And you did it anyway. That is not just dishonesty. That is disrespect on a level that I struggle to even understand." The audience broke into heavy, emotional applause. Steve let it settle before continuing. "I have been doing this show for a long time. I have seen a lot of men stand on this stage. Good men, flawed men, men who made mistakes and owned them. But what I saw today was a woman who did not need anyone to rescue her. She rescued herself. She used the skills God gave her, the same skills she uses every single day to help her clients, and she uncovered the truth on her own. She did not hire a private investigator. She did not snoop through his phone. She followed the money. Because money does not lie, James. Money tells the truth even when people refuse to." He turned back to Renee. "Your father taught you that a person who knows the truth can never be controlled by someone who sells lies. I do not know your father, but I can tell you right now, he raised a remarkable woman, and I hope he is watching this, because he should be the proudest man in Virginia today." Renee's composure cracked for the first time. Her eyes filled with tears, and she pressed her fingertips to her lips for just a moment. Not from the pain of what James had done. From hearing someone acknowledge, on the biggest stage she had ever stood on, that her father had raised her right. Nicole put her arm around Renee's shoulders and squeezed. James stood alone. His cousin Darren had moved several feet away. Even Frank, their neighbor who barely knew the full situation, had taken a step back. James looked at Renee and spoke, and for the first time all day, the charm was gone. The performance was gone. What was left was a man with nothing to hide behind. "You are right," he said. His voice was barely audible. "About all of it. Every number, every dollar, every lie. You are right. I do not have an excuse. I do not have a reason that makes any of it okay. I took from you and from our boys, and I told myself I would put it back before you noticed. But you noticed. Because you always notice. And I am sorry, Renee. I know that word means nothing right now. But I am sorry." Renee looked at him for a long moment. Then she said something that would become the most quoted line from the entire episode. Her voice was steady, calm, and final. "James, sorry is a word. $47,000 is a fact. Our son's empty college fund is a fact. The woman in Fredericksburg who thinks you are divorced is a fact. I did not come here for your apology. I came here because for 18 months, you made me doubt my own eyes. You told me I was imagining things. You told me the numbers were wrong. You made me question my own skill, the thing I am best at in this world, because admitting I was right meant admitting what you were. So I am not here for sorry, I am here so that the truth lives somewhere you cannot edit it, deny it, or explain it away. The truth is on the record now, and I am done." The standing ovation that followed was the longest of any Family Feud episode that season. 200 people rose to their feet and did not sit down for nearly 45 seconds. Several audience members were openly weeping. Steve Harvey stood at the center of the stage, shaking his head slowly, his hand over his heart. He turned to the camera one final time. "Ladies and gentlemen, what you just saw is not a game show moment. It is a masterclass in what happens when you underestimate a woman who knows her worth and knows her numbers." Renee Wallace did not come to this stage to make a scene. She came to set the record straight. And she did it with more composure, more intelligence, and more dignity than I have ever seen from any person on this stage. Ever. The game was never completed. Both families received their full prizes and appearance fees. The Beckett family approached Renee backstage, and Mrs. Beckett, who had been married for 35 years, held Renee's hands and said, "Honey, what you did out there took more strength than I have seen in my entire life. You remember this day. Not as the day your marriage ended, but as the day you chose yourself." When the episode aired 6 weeks later, it became a phenomenon unlike anything Family Feud had ever produced. The clip of Renee calmly reciting the dollar amount was viewed over 120 million times in the first 3 weeks. It was not just the shock that drove the views. It was the precision. It was the calm. It was the image of a woman who had turned her devastation into data and her heartbreak into an airtight case. People did not just watch the clip. They studied it. They dissected it. They shared it with the caption, "This is what happens when you lie to an accountant," and that phrase trended globally for over a week. The public reaction was enormous and immediate. Financial advisors and accountants posted videos analyzing Renee's methodology, praising the way she had tracked the discrepancies without alerting James. Women's advocacy organizations cited her story as an example of financial abuse in marriage, a form of domestic abuse that is underreported and poorly understood. Renee's case illustrated how one partner can systematically drain a family's resources while the other partner is left in the dark, and it sparked a national conversation about financial transparency in relationships. Renee returned to Richmond and went back to work. She filed for divorce within 2 weeks of the episode airing. The proceedings were handled by a lawyer who took the case pro bono after watching the episode, calling it the most thoroughly documented case of marital financial fraud she had ever seen. The spreadsheet Renee had built over 12 months became the centerpiece of the settlement. James did not contest it. There was nothing to contest. The numbers were irrefutable. Renee's father, Harold, watched the episode from his living room in Richmond with Renee's mother beside him. When it was over, he called his daughter. He did not say much. Harold was not a man of many words. He simply said, "You remembered what I taught you. I am proud of you, baby." Renee said later that those words healed something inside her that James's betrayal had broken. James left Richmond and relocated to a different city. He repaid every dollar to his son's college fund over the following 2 years as part of the divorce agreement. People who knew him said he was humbled by the experience in a way that seemed genuine. He did not do interviews. He did not try to tell his side of the story publicly. The only statement he ever made was a brief post online that read, "I lied to the best person I ever knew, and she proved the truth in the way only she could. I have no one to blame but myself. My sons deserve better, and I intend to give it to them from now on." Lorraine Drake, the woman in Fredericksburg, also spoke publicly once. She released a short video in which she said she had no idea James was married. She said he had shown her photos of his sons, but told her they lived with their mother after a divorce. She said she felt sick to her stomach when she watched the episode and realized the full extent of what James had been doing. She said, "I was lied to just like Renee was. I did not know she existed, and when I saw her stand on that stage and lay out every fact with that kind of calm, I felt 2 things. Shame that I had been any part of it, even unknowingly, and admiration for a woman who turned her worst nightmare into something nobody could deny." Lorraine said she had reached out to Renee privately to apologize, and while she did not share the details of their exchange, she said Renee had been gracious in a way she did not expect and did not deserve. Devin, Renee's 12-year-old son, asked his mother a question a few weeks after the episode aired that Renee said she would remember for the rest of her life. He came into her home office one evening, sat down in the chair across from her desk, and said, "Mom, is that why you always told me that math matters?" Renee looked at her son and realized that he had absorbed more of what had happened than she thought. She told him, "Math matters, baby, because numbers tell the truth even when people do not. And if you learn to read the numbers, nobody can ever lie to you." Devin nodded, got up, and went back to his room. 2 weeks later, he asked to be moved into the advanced math class at school. Renee signed the form and cried after he left for the bus. Nicole, Renee's sister, was celebrated in her own right for the moment she stepped forward on stage and told James he did not get to control when and where the truth came out. That clip was shared millions of times, and Nicole's words became a rallying cry for women who felt pressured to keep their pain private for the sake of appearances. Nicole later said, "I watched my sister suffer in silence for a year while she put that spreadsheet together. She asked me not to say anything because she wanted to be sure. When she was sure, she chose her moment, and I was going to stand beside her no matter what." Steve Harvey spoke about Renee at multiple events in the months that followed. At a business conference, he told the audience, "I have been around powerful people my entire career. CEOs, politicians, celebrities. But the most powerful person I have ever stood next to on any stage was a 40-year-old accountant from Richmond, Virginia, who dismantled her husband's lies with a spreadsheet and a calm voice. She did not need to yell. She did not need to cry. She had the numbers, and the numbers do not lie. That woman reminded me that the truth, when it is organized and presented with conviction, is the most powerful force on earth." 6 months after the episode, Renee began volunteering with a nonprofit in Richmond that provided free financial literacy workshops for women. She taught women how to read bank statements, track household expenses, and recognize the warning signs of financial manipulation in relationships. The workshops were so popular that she eventually formalized the program under the name Know Your Numbers, and it expanded to 3 cities within its first year. Every session began with the same sentence. Renee would stand at the front of the room and say, "My name is Renee. I am an accountant. And I am here to teach you how to read the story that your money is telling you, because sometimes that story is the most important one you will ever hear." The program attracted attention from banks and financial institutions that wanted to partner with Renee. 2 major banks in the Mid-Atlantic region offered to sponsor the workshops, providing free printed materials and covering the cost of venue rentals. A national women's magazine featured Renee in a profile that called her the woman who turned a spreadsheet into a movement. Renee was uncomfortable with the attention at first. She was an accountant, not a public speaker, but she kept showing up because every workshop brought another woman to her afterward who said, "I looked at my bank account for the first time last night, and something does not add up. Can you help me?" And Renee always said yes. 1 year after the episode aired, Family Feud invited Renee back for a special update segment. She walked onto the stage to a standing ovation that lasted over a minute. She wore a tailored navy suit and a necklace of yellow roses, a custom piece her sister Nicole had commissioned from a jeweler to match the bouquet Renee had carried at her wedding. It was a way of reclaiming the symbol, turning it from a reminder of broken promises into a mark of new beginnings. Steve hugged her warmly. "Renee Wallace, how are you doing?" Renee smiled, a genuine, unguarded smile. "Steve, I am doing better than the numbers ever predicted. My boys are thriving." Devin made the honor roll. "Micah still tells the same knock-knock jokes. My program is growing, and I wake up every morning knowing exactly where every dollar in my life is going. There are no more mysteries, no more lies. Just the truth. And the truth, it turns out, is a very comfortable place to live." Steve pointed at her and shook his head slowly. "You know what you are, Renee. You are proof that the truth does not need to be loud to be powerful. You walked onto this stage a year ago with a spreadsheet and a steady voice, and you changed the conversation about what it means to stand up for yourself. You did not throw things. You did not scream. You presented the facts, and the facts were devastating. I have said it before and I will say it again. Do not ever lie to an accountant. The audience laughed and applauded. Renee laughed too. It was the laugh of a woman who had come through the hardest chapter of her life and found something better waiting on the other side. Renee's story endured in ways that went far beyond the Family Feud audience. Her phrase, $47,000 is a fact, became shorthand in popular culture for holding someone accountable with evidence rather than emotion. Financial literacy organizations adopted her story as a teaching example. Universities invited her to speak to accounting and business students about the intersection of personal ethics and professional skill. And every time she stood in front of an audience, she began with the same lesson her father taught her at the dinner table in Richmond. A person who knows the truth can never be controlled by someone who sells lies. Harold Mitchell's words had traveled from a family dinner table to a game show stage to millions of people around the world, and his daughter had proven them right. If this story reminded you that the truth always finds a way out, and that knowledge is the most powerful tool a person can have, hit that like button right now. Subscribe to our channel and turn on that notification bell so you never miss another incredible story. We bring you the most powerful and unforgettable Family Feud moments every single week. Real families, real courage, and real lessons that stay with you. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next one.